we win and we all shine. Sure, my people gotta play at the table before mine.
That's brunch on Sundays. This one's different.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here, of course, the UFC Vegas 47 recap. It's been a while since I've done one of these recaps. We missed out the first two events of the year. I do apologise. Cater with an absolutely fantastic display against Giga Chikadze, and then, of course, we had the two title defences. Devin Figueiredo defeating Brandon Moreno. Looking forward to that fourth fight. And, of course, Francis Ngannou defending his title against Cyril Gane. But we're going to be talking about, of course, this weekend's action, UFC Vegas 47, where Sean Strickland put on a quiet performance for Sean Strickland standards, but it was a very effective performance against Jack Hermansson. He put on a display where, if it was in boxing, you'd say he jabbed his face off. It was a perfect game plan. He kept him at distance. He wasn't the most aggressive, wasn't the most sort of... he didn't come up with the most action. Jack Hermansson was a lot busier in the fight, but he was hitting a lot of air, Jack Hermansson. Whereas Sean Strickland was very, precise with his striking. He landed a better percentage of them, despite throwing less. And that was the reason for me why I gave him the fight. I didn't think he won it 4 rounds to 1. We gave Jack Hermansson the first round. He got off pretty well. It looked like Sean Strickland started a little slow. Maybe took that first round off with the pressure of the 5-round fight as a whole. Maybe preparing himself going that a little longer. And of course, even himself said, he didn't switch on in the fight as he usually would. And I think Jack Hermansson capitalised on that. But it seemed like Jack Hermansson, after that first round, sort of lost confidence in the fight. I don't know whether he was expecting to get Sean Strickland out there pretty quickly, or maybe there was a problem in the camp where his gas tank, didn't allow him to spread himself out of the 5 rounds. So he thought, I get in there, get in the first round, not best camp, but let's get the job over and done with and get out of there almost and fight another day. But that didn't work. And once that second round started, it was all Sean Strickland from there. Again, Jack Hermansson was the busier of the two, but a lot of the strikes he was throwing or attempting was missing and landing on thin air, where Sean Strickland was using that jab almost to perfection, boxing the face off of Jack Hermansson. You saw that in the end, with Jack Hermansson's eye swollen up and his face reddened, where Sean Strickland then he just got started, really. And of course, there's a lot of talk about Sean Strickland's training practices, but I think it's Paul Felder's making a good point that he's always in the gym training for a fight. He's always in there doing sparring rounds and a type of workout that allows him to maybe go longer in these fight rounds and maybe not. He feels at home in the octagon. He feels at home fighting. It's not like he's in the weight room or in the cardio room. He's in the ring, he's in the octagon, he's hitting pads, he's sparring, what seems to be live rounds pretty much. There's no blanks coming out of Sean Strickland, is there, during training camps, which is interesting to see. And it's interesting to see where he goes next, Sean Strickland. It's interesting even more so where Jack Hermansson goes next. Of course, Sean Strickland goes up to 25-3. It is a 6-fight win streak now for the guy. Albeit a split decision, and he himself said maybe the win bonus, the thought of the win bonus at least was getting the better of him. He doesn't want to get knocked out and have to restart from scratch. The job of the challenger is to build your way up to a number 1 contendership, and hopefully some way on the way you get 50k bonuses, some way on the way you get some notoriety. And I think he's coming there now. He's getting some fans on his side. Of course, this sort of, I don't want to call it a persona because it feels authentic, but the way he carries himself seems to be quite, sometimes scary, but sometimes quite humorous. Like the post fight interviews he did with the media was quite hilarious. I found myself chuckling away at that. He doesn't carry himself too serious, which, when you look at him in training, he seems like a serious human being, but I guess he takes his work very seriously, and outside of that, he's a different competitor. But it feels authentic. It doesn't feel like a Colby Covington sort of persona. And that's intriguing. It brings eyes to him, but he is lacking that sort of finish rate now. He's got 3 decisions in a row against Jocko, Hall, and now Hermansson. So he's slowly climbing up those rankings, and of course, he probably booked himself a fight with either Paulo Costa or Marlon Vittorio Brunson Cannonier fighting next week, or this week, should I say. And of course, we've got a title fight between Whitaker and Israel Adesanya this week at 271. So there's only 2 competitors left there, and we'll take a look at the rankings in a minute. But let's have a look at the actual statistics from the fight. 137 strikes, landed out 353 for Hermansson, 161 out of 338 there for Strickland. And of course, I think this is the real kick in the teeth for Hermansson. 0 out of 8 takedowns attempted in the fight. So it's 0% success rate, of course, 100% success rate for Sean Strickland when it comes to his takedowns. And it was tough seeing the split decision. There's been a lot back and forth. My good friend Gary, who's on the casual couch, of course, did a breakdown on the rounds and the scoring using the judging criteria and gave Jack Hermansson 2 rounds. I think you could possibly give him 2 rounds, but personally I gave it 4-1 just because of the effectiveness of the striking and the damage rather than the pressure and the control that Hermansson was putting on Strickland. You could see he was almost chasing the fight, whereas Strickland was keeping to the game plan, using his jab effectively. He didn't really have to use much else tools. He was using some good body kicks here and there. But again, as I said at the start of the show, Hermansson was very much the busier guy, but throwing a lot more into thin air. And you saw that in the 2 judges' scorecards that gave it a 49-46 in favour of Strickland, which I agreed with. And for me, I think Sean Strickland again next is either Marlon or Paulo Costa. I'd love the Paulo Costa fight just because the back and forth. But I can equally see the back and forth between the Tory and Strickland being, equally as good. I'll probably put it on a pay-per-view card. Maybe, Israel Adesanya is used to fighting, 3-4 times a year. Albeit he only fought twice last year with Jan Blachowicz and Marlon Tory. That's probably due to a lack of competition and the calendar, the shape of the calendar with Robert Whitaker and Darren Till, etc. getting injured. So I'd like to see him as a co-main event probably to Adesanya. Of course, Marlon Tory is going to want to get that fight back against Adesanya. Paulo Costa wants to rematch. Paulo Costa, can he even make 185 anymore? There's a lot of talk between him and Bellator at the UFC about what the division he's going to be fighting at. Personally, I'd see him at 205, but if he's adamant he can fight at 185, I'd probably give him one more shot. And if you miss weight, you're either cut or you're signing a contract for 205 the very next day. The Jack Hermansson is an interesting one. He was climbing the rankings up pretty well, but that's now 1-3 in his last all that win against Kelvin Gastelum. Lost to Cannonier, Vettori, and Strickland. So all guys that are ahead of them, obviously Vettori and Cannonier, 2nd and 4th in the rankings, or 2nd and 3rd. In the rankings, and Sean Strickland's going to be probably top 5, going into this one. Paulo Costa coming off a loss to Marvin Vettori also. Hermansson, I'd probably book him. You could book him against Till. That fight was supposed to happen. It depends. It looks like Darren Till could be fighting Uriah Hall. That was being targeted for UFC London, I believe. So it's going to be interesting when or if that fight gets made, or you fight Hermansson. Both of them coming off losses, of course. Both of them in a bit of a sticky patch in their middleweight careers at the moment. I've got the Paulo Costa fight, but you don't want to be giving Hermansson someone above him. You've got Kelvin Gastelum's now Imavov, fighting Imavov. So maybe you get the winner of that fight, especially if it's Imavov, because he's going to be coming up those rankings pretty quickly with the win. And Jack Hermansson almost got Anthony Smith feeling about him, where he probably needs to get one more win under his belt, or you're looking at, falling back down the rankings, so to speak. And to have a look at the rankings, of course, there's Uriah Hall, Darren Till, both need an opponent, so I'd go down that route for Jack Hermansson. I'd also be tempted. I don't know how much weight he cuts to get to 185, but I'd be interested to see him at 205. I think, he's got a good wrestling background. He's got some good strength. I think he can bulk up to 205, maybe take 6 months out of the game. He's 33 years of age. He's still in his prime. He could bulk up to 205, I reckon. He's 6'1", so he's got a good light heavyweight frame, and maybe see him against Dominic Reyes, or maybe see him against an Anthony Smith, even, and Nikita Krylov, who's fighting Paul Craig. I think Jack Hermansson could certainly have a run at light heavyweight with the names up there. Maybe Europasco might be a bit too far for him, but again, I think his days, and if not competitors at middleweight, with all due respect, might be running thin. Like, you've got a Brad Tavares, you've got Imavov, you've got Andre Muniz, maybe a Kevin Holland versus Jack Hermansson. Of course, that fight was meant to happen. In fact, here's the fight you make: Jack Hermansson versus Luke Rockhold. If Luke Rockhold is serious about coming back, let's have Jack Hermansson, because he's got a good valued name now. He can fight in Europe, he can fight in Sweden, in his hometown, he can fight in Norway, of course. You could put him in a London or a Dublin or a Paris maybe. Or they've been to Prague in the past, I know. So maybe Jack Hermansson versus Luke Rockhold wouldn't be the worst shout at all for Jack Hermansson. I'm actually going to do it next opponent for Jack Hermansson, and we'll have a little look at who he can fight next. But I think maybe a Luke Rockhold, a Darren Till, Uriah Hall, maybe a Brad Tavares, or I would say move to 205 and look at Nancy Smith or Thiago Santos, someone in that sort of ballpark. Maybe a Volkan Ozdemir, and if we see a run at 205 to him, perhaps. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments down below. But of course, for Sean Strickland, it's one of two competitors really, depending on when he wants to get back in there. And of course, that's Tori and Paulo Costa. And probably see him again in March, perhaps. Actually, no, we're in February now, so maybe April, May time. Maybe a 2-month turnaround, 3-month turnaround. So I would say if we've not seen him before July, I'd be surprised. And let's move on to the co-main event. Of course, we've got Nick Maximov, back-to-back split decision on the co-main main event this weekend. Some close fights. Soriano put in a good performance, but I think Maximov did a fantastic performance. He controlled the fight, especially with his wrestling. He wasn't too busy with his striking on the ground, which I think is why the judges was a bit swayed in whether they wanted to give it towards Maximov or Soriano. Soriano was a lot busier again with his striking, especially on the ground. He was getting taken down quite a bit. It looked like he hurt his knee in that third round also. But he was certainly doing the ground and pound. He was striking, albeit he was up against the fence for a lot of the rounds. So it was octagon control for Maximov, damage control for Soriano, and it was a very close fight. Of course, Soriano's now on a 2-fight loss streak, having lost to Brendan Allen in July. But it is a tough bout, of course. I think, it's an interesting one. Maximov looking good, of course, coming out of the school of Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz. It'd be interesting to see. I'd like to see him up against maybe an Alex Oliveira, or maybe a Cowboy Oliveira, or someone of that stature. I was seeing a tweet saying let's put him up against Hamza. I think that's a bit too soon. A bit unfair on the poor guy. He's only 24 years of age, and he's 8-0. And Khamzat Chimaev is probably a win away from fighting for a title at the moment. He's an absolute monster. If you've seen him training with Kane Musa, he's getting ready for his Bellator Dublin fight against Peter Cudi in 2 weeks' time. He looks an absolute monster, and props to Kane Musa for training with him. But I think, Maximov, give him Alex Oliveira, maybe someone in that ballpark. But again, a good performance from him, and put him in a co-main event. He has got that Diaz push, and he's got the Dana White Contender Series push also behind him, which is always a good thing to have. So I think maybe Alex Oliveira would be a good scrap for him. Someone quite with a good name value and quite young. Maybe Donald Cerrone even. I think Cerrone might be a push too far. But if Cerrone wants to have a scrap, I know he's fighting soon, isn't he? Against Joe Lozon, I believe. So maybe he gets the winner of one of those two, perhaps. And of course, the man that we're talking about is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Also in that 175. Actually, sorry, Maximov's a 185. The one am I thinking? So maybe a Cowboy there, but I'm pretty sure Cowboy maybe likes at 170, don't he? There it is. But Rakhmonov at 170, of course. I think actually, Maximov versus Kevin Holland would be fun. We've seen Kevin Holland have problems with his wrestling. So maybe Maximov. I know Kevin Holland might be talking about 170, but if there was a 185 fight there, it would be Kevin Holland, a striker versus a grappler. See how that goes down. He does have a bit of a young or an older version of Usman Maximov with that wrestling style without the striking, so to speak. It'd be interesting to see when he's 28, 29, can he implement that striking? I'm sure he can. He's fighting while training with the Diaz's, 2 fight boxes of the game. So it'd be interesting. But yes, Shavkat Rakhmonov, another first round finish with a finish over Carlston Harris in the first round, putting him to 15-0, remaining undefeated, and probably the next sort of star of this division behind Khamzat Chimaev in terms of hype and excitement when watching him fight. There's an expectation with him to come in and ragdoll his opponent now, and he is getting that slower build up to 170. Obviously, Khamzat Chimaev got absolutely catapulted into the rankings, and maybe rightfully so, the way he ragdolled his opponents. Let's talk about him fighting Ian Edwards. I don't think we're going to be talking anytime soon of, Rakhmonov fighting Edwards unless Edwards loses 2 or 3, this year maybe. But for me, the number 1 fight for Shavkat is Miguel Pereira. Both at 170, both very exciting fighters. Very dynamic fighters, a lot of hype in there. I think those two should be on a course to fight one another this year. And personally, I think that's a fantastic fight to make. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And of course, Brendan Allen beat Sam Alvey. Submitted him in round 2. Of course, it was one of those fights in the middle of the card that Brendan Allen put on a fantastic performance, taking it on short notice, which is where you kind of feel sorry for Sam Alvey, but he's now on an 8-fight losing streak, or I believe he's without a win in 8 fights at least. I think there's a draw in there and 7 defeats. And there's a lot of talk about, whether his time in the UFC is done. He seems to be a very company man. He's always, from his record and his sort of apparent reliability to fight in the cage. He is a company man. The UFC do, applaud a company man, a man who can always say yes to the call, whether it's to build another person up or, fill a card with a good name. But I think Sam Alvey's time in the UFC is coming to an end. I don't know what's his contract like. He must have had a long contract or signed a contract recently, because he's lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the last 8, and that was a draw against Down Jung in October 2020. So he's actually without a win in 4 years almost. Coming up to June, 4 years. So yes, let us know what you think the UFC should do with Sam Alvey. What's next with Sam Alvey? Do you give him one more try, or do you say, unfortunately, you're not quite keeping your hold here in the UFC anymore, it's time to find pastures new? And of course, the same could be said for Trajan Gore. Coming in, talking the talk of the future double champ. He may well be a future double champ, but Brian Battle proved on the night that he is the ultimate fighter. He was the ultimate fighter champion last year when he fought Gilbert Urbina, and he put on a fantastic performance. Trajan Gore gave I don't know if he was timid on the night. He looked like he came in and hadn't been there for a while, whereas Brian Battle seemed like he had already stepped in that octagon. Of course, the Apex was the shooting ground for the Ultimate Fighter, of course, and both of those fought in that octagon very successfully during the show. But of course, Brian Battle came out available on the tougher night against Urbina, submitted Urbina, of course, by round 2, and he looked fantastic again against Trajan Gore, grinding out a decision victory. And Trajan Gore looked a bit raw, didn't he? He was 3-0 coming in here, while Brian Battle was 6-1, and of course up to 7-1. So I would say, if I'm the UFC, I'd say, Trajan Gore, let's give you a developmental contract. Let's see you in LFA. Let's see you in a lower down promotion, maybe an FAC. Maybe Cage Warriors pick him up. They're good with their upcoming talents. They're good with the raw sort of minerals of a good fighter. And Trajan Gore could be in that Cage Warriors America roster. With a 3-1, he's got a hype behind him. He's on, Cage Warriors is on, of course, UFC Fight Pass. The UFC can keep tracks on him and what he brings in. And I think he's still got a good future ahead of me. He's 27 years of age, but it felt like, with all due respect, watching Tyron Woodley. A man with a lot of power, a lot of, capabilities, a lot of athleticism, and he can land that bomb when he can, but he's just not really throwing it enough. Now, whether that was nerves on the night, or maybe a lack of experience that he's just craving at the moment, because, he was 3-0, but, split decision win, and then, three finishes out of his last four. Of course, 2 of those were exhibition matches against Ryder Newman and Gilbert Urbina. So it's an interesting one, but I think Brian Battle's got a good future ahead of him. Fantastic name as well. Battle versus Gore is probably the ultimate mixed martial arts bout, I guess. 2 absolutely fantastic objectives to explain the sport of mixed martial arts, I suppose. Julian Rose and Stephen Peterson gave the start of the night. Of course, unfortunately, Stephen Peterson did make weight. So Julian Rose, the lucky bastard, got 100k on the night, and very deserved. It was a fantastic fight from back and forth. It was one of those ones where it looked like Julian Rose was, putting himself way clear into a victory, but he just couldn't get that finish. And Peterson came back. It was blood everywhere from Peterson. I think he got a cut in his mouth just on the corner there. That was bleeding quite heavy. But again, fantastic fight. Probably, who got fight in that region, but was the best fight on the card. the main event was good, but it was a bit lackluster in the fireworks we was almost expecting. And the trash talk we was expecting, which came in the last 15 seconds. John Castaneda beat Miles John by submission. Hakeem Dawodu defeated Max Chisano by unanimous decision. I think it was Amy Kaplan made a tweet, obviously with the media post-fight, that Dawodu had said had he lost that fight he was going to retire, and he's still 13-2. I think he's still quite young, isn't he? He's still 30, so he's still got a lot of to offer the sport. So had he retired, it would have been a sad retirement to see, because he's an exceptional fighter. I'd like to see him fight someone like Leroy Murphy. I know Leroy Murphy's got a fight coming up, but I think those two would put a good scrap on. As did Chidi and Njokuani with a fantastic 16-second knockout to make his debut and mark his spot in the UFC against Marc-Andre Barriault. Alexis Davis beat Julius Dodiarenko with a unanimous decision. Gelton Almeida knocked out Danilo Marquez. Philippe Rowe also finished Jason Witt, and of course Malcolm Gordon opened at the night. Was won by a verbal submission with an arm injury to Bondar. So it was a good night of fights. It wasn't a vintage card, but there's some good narratives coming out of there, particularly from Maximov and Sean Strickland, and what's happening next to Hermansson. Of course, let's not forget Shavkat Rakhmonov. Probably one of the breakout stars maybe of 2020. I'd guess you'd put money on him being someone we look at 2023, maybe fighting for a top 5, maybe a title going to the end of that year. So yes, that was UFC Vegas 47. Of course, UFC London tickets went on sale last week in the UK and I guess around the globe, but sold out in seconds. Unfortunately, we didn't get tickets for the event. It would have been our first UFC event, and what cracking event it would have been. UK and British MMA absolutely thriving. We've got Mohamed Mokaev making his debut. We've got Jack Shaw in there. We've got obviously Tom Aspinall making his first main event and his first crowded event as well with the UFC. So there's a lot of things to be excited for going to that card. Paddy Pimblett on there, of course, making his second fight in the UFC. So yes, we will be doing a watch along for that. Of course, it'll be in good time for British fight fans and European fight fans as a whole. And yeah, if you got tickets, congratulations to you. They were hard to grab a hold of, but certainly worthwhile getting. And of course, the night before that, we've got Cage Warriors, where we've got Paul Hughes versus Jordan Vucenic too. So a fantastic weekend of fights. Cage Warriors back in Manchester, of course, in April, and April 1st and April 2nd, back-to-back events. I'm hoping I'm going to be there. Watching that because, of course, Cage Warriors 112, my very first event in Manchester. Shout out Quilter for sorting that one out with MMA Latest, of course, previously. And yeah, it's been a good week for MMA and British MMA. So yes, make sure to go follow us on socials, CageChat MMA, and of course, CageChat MCR for all our Manchester-based mixed martial arts. Of course, Game Surgery mentioned previously in the show, fighting at Bellator Dublin. Got Mokaev, of course, training in Wigan and Bahrain, but fighting out in Manchester, of course. You've got Brendan Loughlin at the PFL. There's a lot of things going on with Mancunian MMA at the moment. And then go follow CageChat UK. That's Morale, the rest of the UK, our Scottish Casey O'Neill fighting this weekend at 271. You obviously got, all the Cage Warriors guys. We've got Dominic Wood in a fantastic year last year. And all the rest of the British fighters that are going on at the moment. So go make sure to give those a follow on Instagram. Make sure to follow CageChat MMA at Twitter, Facebook and Instagram on the main accounts, that is. Make sure to drop this a subscribe and like, and we will see you guys on the next video.